and welcome to the Frankston Toastmasters podcast. My name is Thomas Moore and I am your host. In today's episode, I will be interviewing Simon Walliker. Simon is the most recent member from Frankston Toastmasters to have achieved the Distinguished Toastmasters Award. I'll be having a chat with Simon about his journey in Toastmasters, which has led to him achieving this award. We will discuss the people who have helped him along the way, as well as how Toastmasters has helped him to grow throughout his journey. I also asked Simon for any words of advice he has about structuring a speech and how to tackle the infamous table topics questions. We even start the podcast off by getting Simon to put his advice into action and answer a table topic question for you, the listener. I have no doubt that you'll enjoy this episode as you hear what Simon has to share. Hi Simon, and welcome to the Frankston Toastmasters podcast. My name's Tom Moore, and we're going to be discussing a number of things today, all things Frankston Toastmasters. So you ready for this, Simon?
I am ready for this. In fact, I am so ready that you can't see this, but I am actually putting on my tie at the moment just to speak to Tom here today.
He certainly has dressed up, haven't you, Simon?
I have indeed.
I feel like I'm a little bit underdressed. I didn't actually have a tie to wear. Well, I did, but I didn't think to wear one. So,
well, when I first joined Toastmasters, and I'm skipping ahead, I'm sure, but when I first joined Toastmasters, I was given a couple of tips. One was that to wear a suit. And a suit and tie, all the rest of it, because it was viewed as though it was a business club. And it sort of is. Always bring a pen and paper and write down everything. And number 3, raise your hand at every single opportunity.
So there you go. So this is what brings us here today, obviously. You've raised your hand at the opportunity to speak on the podcast.
I did indeed.
And you're wearing a suit. I don't see a pen. Oh, no, there's a pencil there on the desk there. So you are all right there.
I am fully adept with pens all over the place.
Very nice, very nice. Now, I thought I might actually start off with something that I didn't try in the last podcast, and that is, why don't we do a table topic? Okay. I'm going to throw you under the bus here. So many people join Toastmasters. When they do so, they generally take a large step outside of their comfort zone in going to a new club and doing public speaking, which a lot of people fear. So my question for you, Simon, is can you please tell me about a time, excluding Toastmasters, where you have had to take a big step outside of your comfort zone?
There's been a number of occasions. I think probably the biggest step outside of my comfort zone was really just rebranding myself. I was a chef for a number of years, and it wasn't a healthy environment for myself. It's great for others, it just wasn't healthy for me. So I decided to get out of it. As they say, if the kitchen's too hot, get out, or thereabouts. So I did. But instead of just going into sales and selling to other chefs, which seemed to be the trend at the time, I decided to be completely out of that and go and retrain. So I did a Bachelor of Business. Well, actually, I started off doing a TAFE course, which led into a Bachelor of Business, which led, because I went to a university. Overseas, they would call it a polytechnic university. Here, they just call it a university, Victoria University. And because they have the ethos of trying to get work ready, they have this thing called work integrated learning. Overseas, they call it an internship. So it's a year of out there in the workforce, and I was a little bit older than everybody else, so I needed to have a bit of a wow factor. So I stepped outside my comfort zone and went to Los Angeles Airport and worked there for a year with a bunch of friends, and that was where I met my wife. And then that goes to the next, stepping outside of your comfort zone, asking her Colombian parents in Colombia to actually ask her to marry me. So continuously stepping outside my boundaries, beyond my comfort zone, seems to be a bit of a trend.
And you know what? that was 2 minutes and 3 seconds. You didn't even have a timer there. So that was, yeah, you've done
I'm
this.
well trained.
You've done it a few times before. So you've got a Colombian wife. And do you get to go over to Colombia often? Or?
It seems about once every 5 years. We haven't gone probably for 6 years. So the aim is to go to Colombia for our 10th anniversary. So that's the plan. It's a big goal. It's a very expensive trip to go over there. But we've got a loving family over there that definitely drinks me under the table and dances me quite ridiculously. Senora Blanca, I have a fond affection for her. She can dance me under the table any time, and just a genuine joy to be around.
It really is. I've been there once before, and I absolutely love Colombia for that exact same reason. So when you go over there, then do they have Toastmasters in Colombia too?
They actually do have a Toastmasters club over there in Bogota. And when I was setting up the club's Twitter account, which is, from memory, I think the hashtag is @1851Toastmaster. When I was setting up that, I was having a look at the clubs floating around, and then just magically Bogota Toastmasters contacted me, and they're going, "Hi, how are you?" So I've got an open invitation to go and visit them sometime. So I have made a commitment that I will one day, when going over there, make a journey and have a night out.
Well, that sounds brilliant. Maybe that could be your next goal, is to get a DTM in speaking Spanish. That could be the next challenge, stepping outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, that's about 4 DTMs down the track.
Fair enough. We'll take it a little bit easy. But I do want to actually speak a bit about your DTM, because obviously it's a big thing for a Toastmaster to be able to achieve that. And you've just recently achieved it yourself. So what does it mean to you to have actually gone through that process and finally got to that point where you've actually got your DTM?
When I gave my final speech for the to achieve the DTM award, I called it Mirepoix. And it was all the elements of my experience within Toastmasters, but it was also intertwined with how to create a base for a soup mix. And we talked about chicken stock, but also creating a speech. And it was one of my hardest, most rewarding speeches that I've done for a while. And you'll see on the club's Facebook page, they've got a cover photo there at the moment, and we're all smiling behind a table. It's just towards the end of that speech being completed. And you'll see, for some strange unknown reason, there's whopping great big soup pot full of something, but you can't quite see it in the photo. Well, that is full of every single manual within Toastmasters that I completed, with every single agenda and every single note of speech, every single certificate ribbon. I wasn't able to fit the trophies in there, but pretty much everything I could fit in there was in that soup pot, and that soup pot was full to the brim. So what was probably the most memorable part of the Toastmasters journey to be a distinguished Toastmaster? I think it was definitely the division director role and delivering the high performance leadership. Giving to others seems to be a trend, particularly of a Frankston Toastmaster, whether it's me or another. It seems to be what we're bred somehow. And that division director role saw me go across, at the time there was 25 clubs across 5 different areas across 400 kilometres of Victoria. And I visited every single club within that area.
Wow.
And I had an awesome team of area directors. I had an awesome team of advisors, including our very own David, but John Bilhars, Terry and Barrage, and numerous other fantastic Toastmasters that, and Annie Pateman, don't forget Annie Pateman, but numerous Toastmasters that I am incredibly grateful for. Darren Waters as well. So these are excellent Toastmasters that made my job a lot easier, but it enabled us to provide a service to each one of the Toastmasters, and during that process we didn't lose one single club, and every single club, to my recollection, improved during that period of time, and may have even increased members during that time. And I think that is a direct result of the training that was provided over 3 separate training sessions, and everything had a theme. So it was a hard 12 months, and at the end of it, I was completely exhausted. I was Toastmastered out for a period of time. And
is there such a thing?
there is such a thing, and when you've been in one of those directorship roles, you'll sort of understand. But it's an addiction as well. It's a beautiful thing to be involved in that many people's lives and helping them become better communicators. I remember one of the first functions as a division director that I attended. It was San Remo Toastmasters 500th anniversary, and there was a gentleman, I've forgotten his name, but I will quote him. He got up and I think the question was, why is Toastmasters fantastic? And it was because his response was, because it makes people a better communicator. If they're a better communicator, they have better relationships. That means you're going to have a better relationship with your employer, with your friends, with your wife, your son, your mother, your father, even your, bank person. The person who's serving you food. You'll at a restaurant. You'll have all these, because you're able to communicate better. You'll have better relationships, and having better relationships, you'll have better results. So if you boil them right back down to it, it's thank you Toastmasters. It's thank you Ralph Smedley.
So there you go. So what does the DTM mean to you? Was sort of the question that sort of then went on a whole lot of different directions. Summing up what I seem to have got from that, whilst getting a DTM is, it's a personal accolade, it actually comes down to the relationships that you've built along the way, and you're thankful for those. Is that correct? And then also, whilst it was hard work, it was helping other people out too. That seems to be the thing that you appreciate the most out of it.
There's a line in a movie called Music and Lyrics, and they there quote Bon Jovi, and Bon Jovi then quotes somebody else, and everybody's quoting everybody. But I'll take it from Music and Lyrics because that's where I know it from. But no man is an island, is what they say. It was for me to achieve that DTM. No questions asked. It would not have been possible without this amazing network of people right throughout. From day one, where Anna Hearn physically and very kindly gave a beautiful evaluation. David Hughes, as my mentor, and very kindly gave me guidance and said, hey, this is what Toastmasters is about. The perfect example of a evaluation from our dear friend Michael Lilly. No man is an island, and it would not have been possible without the network of awesome people throughout Toastmasters.
Excellent. Another question in regards to your DTM is what advice would you give to other people like myself who have just come into the club and very new to the whole association? What advice would you give to someone like myself who would be interested in going and trying to aim towards a DTM?
2 pieces of advice. One, raise your hand at every opportunity. Absolutely. Number 2, keep every single skerrick of information that comes your way. I firmly believe in ideas. If you ignore the tiny idea because it's not good enough, if you ignore that tiny idea, the big idea that's coming through will be blocked. You need to allow that tiny idea to flourish as much as it will, which will allow the big idea to come through. So write down everything, don't ignore anything. If you thought it, put it down on paper, even if it's a post-it note and a pen. And then the final piece of advice is we have, and quoting Michael Lilly again, we have 2 ears, 1 mouth, listen twice as much as you speak.
I love that quote. That is absolutely brilliant. So I was actually at your, when you got your DTM, when you did your last speech, and I absolutely loved it. And like you said, there was a number of things coming into the actual speech too, in terms of the way you crafted it. You were looking, you had props there. You're also talking about your life, and then you're also talking about how, and your journey, but then you're also talking about how to construct a speech. So there was 3 separate things coming in, and it was really impressive in terms of how you constructed it, and not necessarily just to that speech, but for all speeches in general. How do you have a formula that you follow when putting together a speech?
Dhananjaya Hadidarachi put it perfectly. World champion speaker actually visited our club thanks to a couple of words from David just putting the seed in there. So we're very fortunate to have met him back in the day when he was current champion. And he said, what is the takeaway? What is the gift that you want to give the audience? That is what you've got to start off with. If you think of it like a 3-course meal, if you don't get the dessert right, the whole meal's essentially ruined. Because that's the final thing you're going to remember. What's the takeaway? What's the dessert?
And it's the sweet part too,
isn't it?
That's the
sweet part. So if you don't get that right, you're not going to get the rest right. And usually, the beginning is essentially the mirror image of the introduction. So somehow, you need to get from the introduction back to the conclusion. And it's how you interweave it in between. So that's generally what I do. If I don't get the final message right, then it just generally doesn't happen. So yeah, that's probably my tip.
So what about for something like table topics then, where we just did a table topic at the beginning, and you've got all of about 10 seconds to plan what you're going to say and to have an ending. Do you actually do that when you make your way up to the front of the room, or is it something that you just make up as you go?
There's little tips within that in impromptu speaking. It's where you repeat the question. That can give you some extra time. Stand still, don't move. And if you're absolutely petrified, that's a bit easy.
Yeah, I seem to remember doing that a couple of times.
Yeah, and so that can buy you time. But the idea I think of, and this is a lesson that I taught my son as a 5-year-old, and think like a 5-year-old because it makes life a lot easier. What is it that you and the person asking the question has in common? What is the commonality between you and the audience? How can you relate to the audience? So, for example, I don't know, my son is wearing a Spider-Man t-shirt. His friend is wearing a Superman t-shirt. Oh, you like superheroes? That's excellent. I like superheroes too. Let's talk about that. So it's about, yes, you presented a question, but then there's a question within a question, and you need to get that question related to you somehow and then get that out. It seems a lot, but when you think like a 5-year-old, as my wife sometimes would call me immature that way, but when you think like my son, it's a little bit easier.
5-year-olds don't really mind to just go out and talk about whatever either, do they? They're actually quite good at it.
They do. If you gave a child a table topic, they would do awesome. And it's somewhere between being a child and becoming an adult, we lose it somewhere. And I call that teenagers. Because that's when we become judgmental of each other. It's that period of time where if you're not wearing the right clothes, you're not following the right band, you're not doing this, that, or the other. I think that's where we start to be judgmental of each other, and that's where a lot of our fears come in. And it's really cruel because that is the time when majority of the hormones are coming in as well. It's a difficult time. I actually wrote a speech on that as well.
I'd love to see that one. Actually, I'd be fascinated being a teacher myself. I do believe that around those years can be really quite crucial for some students in terms of either flourishing or actually going down and going inside themselves and becoming quite shy.
Absolutely. Well, that speech was called The Ocean of Blue and Grey. Other times it was called Smurfette. And essentially it was where this lady called Sarah, well, she was a young girl at the time, but now she's a mum who lives in Scotland. And she was a person who just was kind and said hi. But before that, no, I was essentially a lonely person. And because she said hi, others would say hi. So they followed her lead. So because of her generosity, and she had no idea of this until when she made a trip just recently. She had no idea of this until I brought it to her attention. Her sons were rightfully impressed with her. So it was nice to actually give her back something that she gave me.
So I really think, I'm not sure whether or not she did Toastmasters, but I think that Toastmasters does give people the confidence to be able to actually say hello to people and have a conversation with people, say in an elevator that you probably wouldn't normally, because you become better at listening, you become better at communicating, as you said before.
Well, people do talk about the elevator pitch and how do I get that right. Well, if you want some serious training on elevator pitches, well, try table topics.
Definitely.
Because that is essentially your elevator journey. Your elevator journey will probably be less than a minute. So if you can get it right, table topic it.
Sounds great. Now, you mentioned before about being a teenager and all that type of thing. And actually, you mentioned as well in previous meetings that you're a big basketball fan and you love playing basketball. I could see a look on your face. It's like, where are we going with this one? But have you got a basketball hoop here? Have you? Oh, you got your hat.
I have my basketball Lakers hat. Yes, I am a big fan of the Lakers. Go Lakers.
So
my favourite is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Magic Johnson, that period of time, that was just a glorious time, yeah.
So just to paint the picture at the moment, Simon's sitting in his suit, he's got a nice tie on, and he's got this grotty hat. It's rather, it looks well loved, let's just say that.
Well, it's well loved, actually. My wife knew that I was a big fan of the Lakers, and she bought this hat when we had a trip over to Los Angeles, and you'll see that just on the side it says SAW and BAW number 1. Well, that's actually our initials, and the number 1 means our first anniversary.
Oh,
there you go.
There you go. So I probably shouldn't pick on the hat then, because it's
nice.
You
can pick on the hat, but I'm a little sentimental.
Absolutely. I'd be holding on to that too.
Yeah.
Well, in regards to basketball, I assume probably you played in a club or something growing up, did you?
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, what makes Toastmasters in your mind a different club to other forms of clubs?
I don't think it's that much different, to be honest. I think it is a team environment. If the club's not working as a team, then the club's going to come into some serious difficulty. And I've seen this within my trips as a division director and doing judging around the places at times. So it's definitely a team environment. And yes, you'll have your coach, you'll have your mentors, you'll have your spotters, you'll have your game plans, you'll have your preparation and practice, I don't think there's much difference. There's definitely not necessarily a uniform, but there's definitely banners and ribbons and certificates and trophies. So the correlation between the two, you know, in fact, I even turned up to a Toastmasters contest in the back row in my basketball gear, and boy, did I get a bollocking from David afterwards. But I was there to support my mates, Anna Hearn and Michael Lilly, when they were competing at the Cranbourne contests. So that's what you do. You may not be playing, but you come along and you support your teammates.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And what initially got you into Toastmasters?
I spoke about this last night. It's considerably harder to do a speech about things that are raw emotions. But now that I'm the other side of the DTM, now that I'm with a fantastic company, and I've got a beautiful family, now I feel is the time that I can start to talk about those things. When I first started, I kept it quiet about where I was at that time, because I felt it wasn't an environment where I could just dump my troubles on everybody else. That was presumptuous and unfair, or at least that's the way I viewed it. Not everybody's that way. If you want to do that, by all means do that, but that just didn't work for me. So when I first started Toastmasters, I was suffering a bit of a bout of depression, an unknown time to me, essentially. My dad had just passed away, and he was a massive influence in my life, and I miss him still to this day. And my son was born only the week prior. So it was a mass of emotions all at once, and I was essentially useless in a way. I wasn't a functioning human being. I was essentially a robot. So I was let go of my casual position and was working casually on and off, but for long periods of time I was unemployed or on very little income. So trying to support a family and going through that and trying to break my way through that depression period, I found some funds and sort of did a bit of a Hail Mary and went to an employment expert. And I'm not talking about those ones where you go to the government and do that kind of thing. I'm talking about the ones that actually get you into positions of essentially train you to be who you want to be. And I didn't utilise every piece of information. It didn't exactly gel with me 100%, but there were little tidbits of that information that I implemented into my life. And one of those suggestions was, for me, I'm very much two different types of people. I'm very community orientated, and I'm very business orientated as well. And in order for me to function correctly, I need an even balance of both. I view myself as a little unusual that way, but it's taken me a long time to realise that. So the suggestion was put forward, get yourself involved in a community activity. So I did. I first of all started off at an op shop and whilst it was nice, it didn't quite work out for me. And then I found myself in a community service organisation called the Cranbourne Information Support Service. And that's where they deal with everything from homelessness all the way through to financial advice, sexual assault. Like, you pick up the paper, look at the worst things in the paper, and for the city of Casey, the Casey South area, that's the demographic that our awesome organisation, which tonight is celebrating its 40th anniversary, I got involved with that. And I'm still involved with that. I'm currently serving as its president. Very grateful for that opportunity. The other side of it was I needed to get involved with something business orientated and get that communication working well. I was a bit clunky and awkward within my speech when talking to people, and that relatability wasn't necessarily there. So the discussion point was either join Rotary or join Toastmasters, and I joined Rotary, and whilst it's a fine organisation, it just didn't match who I was at the time. Then I was told about Toastmasters, and at the start of this interview I sort of touched on that. Wear a suit, bring a pen and paper, and raise your hand for every opportunity. The fourth tip was that every club has a personality. Find the personality that fits. Make sure Toastmasters is for you, and when you do, visit each club until you find one that matches you. So I tried out one of the clubs in the local area. At the time, they had 45 members, and whilst they did service the opportunity for me to recognise that Toastmasters was for me, with 45 members, I figured I couldn't get to the front of the line, so I was never going to get an opportunity to raise my hand as much as I needed. So I couldn't do the local club being Cranbourne. I lived in Cranbourne at the time because that fell on my basketball night. Still needed some form of exercise, and I love basketball. So then I tried Frankston. If Frankston didn't work, I was going to try Dandenong next, but it was at Frankston where I was sitting down and I was watching Joanne Ball do table topics, and it's one of the most interesting table topics that I've ever seen, where she had a series of sample jars, and you're talking about hard questions for table topics. There is no way to prepare for this. You had to smell the sample jar and then come up with the speech. One of the most remarkable things I've ever seen. Anyhow, this gentleman came up and he gave a speech about Vegemite. He was completely wrong about all the facts about Vegemite, but he was able to deliver a speech, and I was just astounded by it. All, because I'm a chef, I knew all the facts were incorrect, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that he was able to get through it, and he was convincing, and it was just a great speech. There was another person in the club at the time, and clearly that person was having a very, very bad day. And I'm sorry for that person's bad day, but that person did everything wrong within an evaluation that you could, and physically, well, not physically, but verbally started to attack this poor person who gave this response about Vegemite. And needless to say, there was a gentleman, which the audience may know, we definitely know, David. He stood up and said, I'm sorry, I've got to give an impromptu educational here. That's not how you do evaluations. This is how you do evaluations. Evaluations are very important, and this is how they're important. It was then and there that I knew not only was Frankston the club for me, I also knew that David Hughes needed to be my mentor. And he was, and he did, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Just because, we know David Hughes and what he just brings to the club. And he's my mentor too, and I've already gotten so much from him, and just like having this chat with you today, I'm getting a lot from you too. It's amazing just when you sit down and actually have the opportunity to talk to someone and listen to someone, just how much you can get from it. The other thing that I found interesting about what you just said there as well is you mentioned Toastmasters was actually a business thing for you, and I find that funny actually, because I see it for me as being a community thing, which it can be both. Absolutely, it can be both. But the reason I say that is because I struggled. So I'm just talking about myself for a second, if that's all right. So I struggled at first in living in Frankston because I'd come from South Yarra, and I absolutely loved just living, 2 minutes away from all the bars and all the food and all of that kind of thing. And then came down to Frankston. I didn't know anyone, and I thought, all right, well, let's go and join Toastmasters after I've been there for about a few months, and it's been the one thing that's turned my view about where I live now, and I absolutely love living in Frankston, and it's because of Toastmasters. So it's that community feel for me, which I really enjoy.
And don't get me wrong, it is definitely a community environment. The network of people throughout, you'll eventually become comfortable with your own club. So it's very important for you, and usually about the 6-month period, sometimes 12. But you'll know when you're comfortable. And it's at that point where you need to visit another club. That's where contests are particularly great, and area contests and division contests and all that kind of stuff. And you don't need to be competing. You can be just doing the timing lights, or being a judge, or being a counter, or what have you. You're in a new environment. And at those new environments, you'll meet new people who are also Toastmasters. You'll go, if you're an officer of the committee, such as your Vice President of Public Relations, you'll go to TLI, or Club Officer Training, or Toastmasters Leadership Institute, and you'll go to these training sessions twice a year, and they're an enormous help right throughout. And I think it's those experiences on top of the club experiences. You've always got to have your home club, but it's that wide network. And Toastmasters is a community. And I'm sure as soon as I do go overseas as a Toastmaster, people will be warmly welcoming. I hear about that from all and sundry, that they are. And the ones that come from interstate or internationally to our club, they're always warmly welcomed. And and we've had a number of international guests, and it's a remarkable thing.
Now, how has Toastmasters helped you outside of actual Toastmasters?
It has enabled me to communicate with different entities and different bodies. If I was not a Toastmaster, I wouldn't have been able to communicate to an advisory body to help stop fracking in Victoria and help stop fracking across the border of Victoria. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to be an active member of the Cranbourne Information Support Service, where I've physically been able to help people on a one-on-one situation. Like there was a circumstance where a suicidal person came up to me at the front counter when I was working there as a volunteer. And they informed me that they were sitting in the car for half an hour, contemplating, should I top myself in the car park, or should I come inside and ask for help? And thank God she asked for help. She came in, and it was then and there where I needed to keep her calm, communicate with her, make sure that she was A-OK, and quickly source the help that she required and have the knowledge of how to do that. So without Toastmasters, I wouldn't have been able to communicate that empathy that she needed at that particular time. Communicating with my son in a non-waffling manner, although I'm probably waffling at the moment, but in a non-waffling manner. Having great communications with my wife, my mother, my sister, and being able to make sure that we're on the right track. And then finally, within this business environment where I am at the moment, I am physically in a customer relations role, I am in a sales role, and everybody comes in with a particular set of requirements for them to build their new home. And when they're building their new home, they're not just building a new home, they're building a new lifestyle. So realizing that it's not just dollars and cents and that it's a lifestyle and it's an emotional journey for them, and that we're only one part of that journey, but to make that as smooth as possible is a very important factor. And without Toastmasters and table topics, I don't think I would have been as helpful as what I appear to be.
I'm going to tell you something that I'm not sure if you're aware of, this perception that that people may have you. I don't know if other people have this perception of you, but this is something that I've noticed since being at the club, and that is you seem to be a voice of reason. And so I'm not sure if you've ever been told that or anything before, but whenever something sort of comes up, you're always quite measured in what you say. And for example, there's talk about competitions and all of that type of thing. And at the last two meetings, you've sort of stopped everyone and said, remember, we come to Toastmasters to get good at the art of public speaking, so that when we go outside and do it, we can do it well.
Absolutely.
And I think quite often we can get lost in the whole idea of competitions and aiming for a distinguished club program and all that kind of thing. But really, both times, because I found myself, that's why I came. And then I'm starting to get excited about all these competitions, which is great. But both times you've sort of brought me back to think, that is true. That is why we're here. So is that something that you've learnt since coming to Toastmasters, or is it something that you had, do you think, beforehand? Or
what I've found is that as far as Toastmasters itself, if you look after the members and find out what they're after, the club point, the DCP points will essentially look after itself. If the club's happy, the club will run well. If the club runs well, a visitor who comes along that may leave would actually join that wouldn't have otherwise. So you can sort of see how those points eventually work themselves out. So it's really talk to each member and find out what they're after and see how both of you can work together in a mutually beneficial way. Am I that way naturally? I try to be. It's definitely a goal. I don't always achieve it on time. Sometimes I have turned into a bit of a roaring lion, and thankfully very few people have seen that. Unfortunately, there are people who have seen it, and it's not pretty. So for those people who have seen it, I do publicly apologise.
But no, you do certainly come across whenever I've been in a meeting with you or anything along those lines, whatever you say is always well thought out, and it comes across like you've really thought about what you're going to say, and you really make sure that everyone feels included and feels valued. So I guess I'm saying thank you for that first of all, but I just found that that's something that I wasn't sure if that came from Toastmasters or if
I think that comes right from the days where I was part of a basketball team, where I was physically a basketball coach. Back in high school, I was the president of the student associations, and again, that was a team effort. So everything's always been team. When I was a little kid, I was part of a youth choir called the Luana Youth Choir. Again, a team of voices. So everything that's been great within my life has been because of a team. It's not been because Simon's awesome. It's been because the people around Simon is awesome. And then it just essentially sorts itself out.
All right. Well, speaking of the people around Simon being awesome, some of the people that you've met through Frankston Toastmasters, are there any characters that stand out to you over the years that you'd like to talk about now?
Well, we've given David a bit too much of a Guernsey so far, so we won't talk about him.
He had his own podcast before as well.
Podcast, so we're fine there. We've mentioned about Michael Lilly, Anna Hearn. They're both great people. Joanne Ball, who was there at the very start for me. These are a bit teachery for my liking, but very organised, and I learnt a lot from her. And a whopping great big smile too. It was great to see. And there's new ones that come along, and there's always ones that just sort of capture your imagination. Stephen and Andrea, they're really capturing my imagination at the moment. And Andrea herself, she's inspirational. She's just come off a hip operation, and she's addicted to ice. Not ice in the bad way. I'm quoting her here, but ice as in physically ice skating. She's a bit of a speed skater, and it's a remarkable thing to actually listen to her. And things that I would normally not find interesting, when she delivers that speech, I'm fully engaged. She gave a speech about military service, and whilst I'm incredibly grateful for the service that the military provide, it's like cowboy movies. Sometimes, if you're watching a military movie, it just glosses over my head. But when listening to it from the lady's perspective, it was remarkable. Stephen, an inspirational speaker, talking about the whole pebble from last year and this year, talking about going up a hill. Definitely great inspirational speakers. And those are the kind. And then you get the true clubmen that don't necessarily get the Guernseys, like your Andrews or your Neils, where you can sit down and have a genuine laugh. And these people really make the club worthwhile. So no man's an island. I'm grateful for those who've come before me. I'm grateful for those who've been there with my journey, and I'm grateful for those who are about to come in and see the awesome Frankston Toastmasters Club.
Absolutely. I mean, just talking about that, the meeting that just passed, so that was our last meeting before our 45th anniversary, and this may be published after the 45th anniversary, but the last meeting before the 45th anniversary, I thought was absolutely brilliant. We had a number of new people come into the club and do just some fantastic speeches, and also some people who've been there for a number of years or for a year or plus, also do a number of fantastic speeches. There's probably been one of my favourite meetings that we've had.
Absolutely, and that's the testament to a good club, is that you don't stick to the same formula all the time. So we tried something new, and we dropped out round robin so that we could fit in the 4 speeches, and then we did the 2 lots of table topics, but we physically divided it in half. And with Johnny, who came on board as an excellent Toastmaster in his first Guernsey as a Toastmaster of the evening, kept us to time. So that was great to see. And I tell you what, he's an entertaining character as well.
Isn't he? He really is. He's just a bundle of joy every time he steps through that door. So moving on a little bit, what does celebrating the 45th anniversary of Frankston Toastmasters mean to you?
Being a division director and having a close eye on what goes on throughout the district of 73, you see some clubs come and go. Our number is 1851. That means that our club was the 1,851st club to charter. Toastmasters has been around for a little over 90 years now, and our club is just under half of that. You can now see that there are, I think it's almost 100,000 different clubs. You can sort of see it, the numbers, but it's a truly remarkable achievement for these people to come on board. People like Ray and Mary Scott, who started the club as charter members, people like Bill Williams and Merv Griffith, who, along with our very own David Hughes, who kept the club running and doing some great work. And remember, I've only been there for the last 5 and a bit years, so I've not been witness to all of it. And then every club has dips and hollows throughout it. You sort of got to ride the wave. I mean, at times our club has gone down as low as 6 members, and our club has been as high as 35 members at particular times. But right throughout 45 years, we've been able to stay in existence. Our club went into a bit of a hollow at one stage when the old guard moved out and the new guard came in, and I was part of that new guard. There was a lovely gentleman called Nikolai Volodin, and I had a great amount of time for him, and both of us had grand visions of what this club should be, and we were probably a little bit immature at the time, but we were able to, what we did provide with the guidance of those who'd been there before us, was provide a spark and an energy back into the club, which provided the older members with that spark and energy to just keep on moving. And then slowly but surely the building blocks got back up again. Unfortunately, Nikolai is no longer with us, and that was a sad day for his passing. But his mum, Lena, who was a member of the club, will be coming along to our 45th. So I'm grateful for his and her friendship.
It's amazing. I have heard about Nikolai, and I have heard about when you guys started up at the club and some of the ideas that you had, and they sound interesting. They sound and actually along those lines, just to finish up, let's just say it's coming time for the 70th anniversary for Frankston Toastmasters, and you're a guest of honour. Mm-hmm. What would you like to see for Frankston Toastmasters between now and then in 25 years' time?
A world champion of public speaking. That's what I would like to see. Just one. Just one's fine. I'm not greedy. A world champion of public speaking doesn't even have to be me. It just has to be a Frankston Toastmaster. And you know what? One day we'll get there. We've put in a lot of effort to get our fine club to where it is. It would be the first, to my understanding, world champion of public speaking in the district of 73. But yeah, I think we've got the makings. So that's what I would like to see at the 70th.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Simon, for joining me for the podcast, and I look forward to many more years working with you.
Thank you, Tom.
Cheers.